I don't want to get too negative about Gnawers, though. I do have a bit of a soft spot for them, right between my heart and my tail, and sometimes in my sofa for later. Their personalities are hardly the most obnoxious either, especially micefolk. And as I said, it may actually be that they were all a gift from the cat gods themselves. I'm not going to pretend to know how exactly cat gods go about such things, but one idea I have is that rodents could have started off as another type of meower they tried to make, but one that didn't come out quite right.
Maybe they decided to create tiny cats to scurry through wall cavities and tree hollows and pipes. After all, if mutts and flappers can come in a range of different sizes, why not meowers? And so the cat gods birthed litters of these mini meowfolk and set them free in the world. Let's call them cat squeaks. Some things turned out pretty well with the cat squeaks, like their ability to scurry and hide and even have kittens in the tiniest places, snout and ear scoop sensitivity, nocturnal know-how, and general survivor stubbornness. But many sacrifices had to be made in the shrinking process. The legs were too stumpy, not enough teeth fit in the gums or claws in the paws, the eyes were too beady, tail too draggy, and the pounce way too short, just to point out a few obvious problems. I'm sure the cat squeaks would have been acceptable in any other critter family. But sadly, they just couldn't cut it as cats, the most perfect of critters, and so do the divine felines proud.
And that was obvious from the first night on the prowl, where not one got even close to a kill, and the next morning too, when the bird gods just sung out with glee watching these scurrying furballs being toyed with by any crusty old pigeon in town, and speared through by the scourge before they even reached a tree hollow to tunnel in. And when dogs showed up on the scene, these failed cat squeaks were never going to have a chance. So the cat gods, with such lofty feline standards to maintain, had no choice but to throw them away, down the drains, into bins, stuffing them into any holes they could find really. Then they just stuck with the standard form of cat, which turned out amazingly well, as we know. A classic critter design yet to be bettered. But what to do with the unwanted cat squeaks that were suddenly scurrying out of all those holes? Well, the cat gods decided that while these things were terrible at being proper cats, they actually had the perfect size and shape to feed proper cats. But first a few changes had to be made. Already these critters were quite different from normal cats, but still didn't quite look or taste different enough to make for that proper division between predator and prey. Cat gods couldn't exactly be encouraging cat eating, could they? So they prepared a special batch of meower milk and placed it in little saucers near all the hideouts. But unlike normal meower milk, which helps shape kittens into proper cats, when the cat squeaks lapped this milk, they lost all feline shape completely, and all our traits too, and made the full transformation into the rodents we see and snatch today. Basically what happened is their snouts got longer, the feet and tails lost all fur, purrs became impossible, and they dropped the fangs and just became obsessed with gnawing, not just gnawing food, but everything a bucktooth could tear. Also, they began to have a ton of families because it's no good trying to live a life of prey if you're only going to create a handful of new meals every year. That's just going to starve your neighborhood.
There were obviously many more details to the transformation. Creating critters is a lot more complicated than dissecting them, but those are some of the most noticeable changes. Of course, the problem then is, how would the Gnawer gods fit into all that? It's a good philosophical question and had me stumped for a bit. But it's actually pretty obvious when you think about the rodent way of life, which is based on stealing everybody's stuff. Sure, we all pull a heist here and there, but that's all they do. So it makes sense that when the cat gods tossed those cat squeaks and turned them into prey, the Gnawer gods probably stole them to use as their own mortal representatives, after failing to really come up with anything that worked properly.
Though it wouldn't surprise me if they then made some changes themselves, even being the ones to add the buck blades, which can actually give a nasty clip if you're not careful. I think this hybrid origin helps explain a few things about rodent kind.
If the Gnawer gods were solely responsible for rodents, it's hard to see them wanting their own critters to spend so much time as meals, and if the cat gods were solely responsible, they might have made the buck blades a little weaker, more nibblers than gnawers, and the tails with a hook in the end to claw snag more easily. So here's how I finish with a nice word on gnawing kind. You could almost say rodents are about as close to the perfect prey as possible.
They're the ideal size for swatting down, lugging through town and stashing in a hole. They pop up everywhere in a constant stream, almost like they're seeping from stonework. They have no claws or fangs. They can't flap and fly away. But most incredibly, I've never eaten a rodent that didn't satisfy, not one I'm telling you. Even this mouse I dragged out of a puddle of engine oil once, after I got the fur coat off, it was still decent. That's a true story. Rodents just seem to be naturally delicious. It's not only cats who think so. Owls, crows, dogs, even the odd hobo man with a roasting stick, you'll get the same story. Rodents were just really lucky, ending up with this natural talent for flavor, and having it from birth, even birth in some of those very unsavory cavities I've mentioned. It's something to be pretty proud of.
And until I taste any different, I'm going to have to assume that every one of them is a succulent belly warmer. Quite the compliment.
So despite their annoying antics and misleading ways, I can't say I have any excessive animosity towards rodents. I'm polite and give an ear flick here and there between meals. I mean, we share the same streets and many of the same nooks and crannies, so there's no need to be at their throats day and night. But in general, I do naturally keep things quite predatory.